So we talk a lot about safety as being important for sleep, which is something that most people don't talk about and don't think about. But
Right.
being in the world of mental health, especially, this is key. And I think when most people hear safety, they think about physical safety, right? And they
Right,
go,
right,
well,
right.
wait a second, I'm safe in my house. My
Right.
kid's safe in his bed. What do you mean? I might not be
right.
feeling safe, and therefore I might not be able to fall asleep. So let's get into that a little bit. When we say safety and the importance for sleep, what are we really talking about there?
So the first salient example I would have to that would be a situation of a sleep disorder like sleep apnea, right? So during sleep apnea, you stop breathing in your sleep, you become unsafe, and what happens? Your body wakes you up because you are now unsafe. So from a medical perspective, if something's going on medically, you could be unsafe, and that obviously that's something that's out of your control. Thinking externally, when I say things are unsafe, maybe we broaden the definition of safety a little bit in this particular context, and we say things like light, right? So we know that light is one of the big disruptors of our sleep. And so if we're in an environment that is well lit, that we should think through that as an idea that could be an unsafe environment for sleep because we're not going to be able to get to sleep.
Yeah.
Right?
So, Dave, how about the psychological, the emotional pieces of that? Because that's a big piece of the safety issue too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like what you were saying, there's a lot of things that influence whether or not we can or can't sleep. Very little of it has to do with our ability to sleep. We
Right.
all have the ability to sleep. We
Right.
highly evolved this ability to sleep, and it's something that is universal to all of us, pretty much, as human beings. And yet, when we are not taught that and we're not given the instruction, then we can start to go down a dangerous path of believing that we're not able to sleep. And then that makes sleep an unsafe space for us. So we start to associate this idea of oh, I have to try to go to sleep now, but maybe I can't. And what happens if I can't?
Right.
And then maybe there's something wrong with me that I can't sleep. And so sleep becomes even more unsafe because it makes us feel like there's something wrong with us because we can't do it the way everybody else can. But meanwhile, 9 out of 10 Americans can't sleep. So it's not just you.
Well,
it's
for
that
sure, it's
we
not
all
just
are
you.
we all are challenged with it because life is stressful and there's just so much incoming information going on, and we don't necessarily train ourselves in the tools to deal with it emotionally, but learning that and remembering that we can sleep really helps us feel safer, and that we're all designed to do it helps us feel safer so that we can take the steps to allow ourselves to be able to do it when we want to.
I would argue there's a general, since COVID, there's been a general feeling of lack of safety,
Absolutely,
right? So
absolutely.
like we're all wandering around and this person's got a mask on and this person doesn't, and all the things that go with that. And I'm not saying we're gain or for either side, but what I am saying is I think as a general rule, I think people are feeling less safe in general.
No doubt.
And I think that plays a role in this whole idea of sleep, because it's like, oh my gosh, was I exposed to this today, or did I go do that today, or what happened? Like those thoughts are things my patients are telling me are running through their heads for sure. And so even maybe not to the point of depression or anxiety, but still to the point of like stress.
Yeah,
right?
stress and hypervigilance. Yeah, for sure. And that gets in the way of that feeling like you're safe enough, even on an emotional level,
Right.
to be able to do something like sleep. I think it's interesting too when we think about kids. Those are some maybe clearer examples where emotions get in the way. When we think about like children and fears around bedtime,
Absolutely.
right? Or fears around, they lie in bed and they start thinking about
Yeah,
things
that's a
from
good
the
point.
day and they get scared about it, right? So it's easier for us to see it in them.
Right.
But a lot of times that same thing is happening for us, as adults too.
Yeah, and I think as we broaden that definition of fear, it's fear of failure, right? Feel
right.
of lack of success, feel of financial ruin, right? The stock market is going crazy, everybody's worried about that.
Fear of discomfort itself.
Yeah,
Right.
fear of just plain
Yeah.
old discomfort,
Yeah.
right? In whatever
Right.
way, shape, or form that
Yeah.
manifests itself for you.
Right.
Yeah. Anticipatory fear. I mean, I think that's a
Right.
big one for sleep
Oh,
too, right?
yeah.
I'm lying in bed, I'm thinking about what's happening tomorrow or what's going to happen
Right.
next week, and that anticipatory fear and anxiety then can really get in the way of our brain and our body feeling like, oh, this is a safe, good time to fall asleep now. And so people
Right.
get stuck in those sort of loops of fears about what's going to happen in the future, and I think that can be a issue as well.
So when I think of fear, I think of elevation in heart rate, right? So I think of because if I'm thinking about something that's fearful to me, like I get into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my heart starts to generate, but that's the antithesis of what we need for sleep, right?
Yeah.
So with sleep, we need our heart rate to go down, hopefully below 60. I can say that if I'm thinking of something that's fearful, when whatever way it comes to me, it feels like that. That's one of the reasons why I think that Apollo has got a lot of really interesting applications here, right? Because when I use the setting, what's the setting called for the nighttime?
Relax and unwind and sleep and renew.
Sleep and renew.
Yeah.
When I turn on sleep and renew, I almost feel like it's like I don't know, this is going to sound stupid. I don't know, it's like a tuning fork almost. I feel like I feel the vibration, and I feel like the rest of me is kind of getting kind of rocking with that, and that helps lower my heart rate, and then that allows me to kind of allow the natural sleep process to kind of take over. And I think that's also a lot of partially what's happening during some of this studies that you've been doing, right? So looking at some of those research studies and trying to understand a little bit more about what's going on there, why don't you kind of help us like get through some of that data and understand a little bit more about some of the new stuff?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's almost like the way you're describing it reminds me of a lullaby when we were kids.
Right, yeah.
It's like a lullaby
Yeah.
for your body. And if the body is stressed out because, you know, what stresses us out most in our lives on the day-to-day is transitions between energy states.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Going from sleepiness to wakefulness, also wakefulness to sleepiness,
Yeah.
calm to work
Right.
to play, and socializing
yeah.
with our family, right? There's these periods of energy and emotional state change that occur that require us to be different at activity 2 than we were activity 1.
For sure.
And that is a stress in and of itself.
Oh yeah.
If we resist that change, we're like, oh, well, I'm not ready to fall asleep, or I'm not ready to socialize right now, and I'm still in work mode, then we will probably not be super pleasant when we're socializing with our family after
Exactly.
work, right? And so it's really about giving ourselves the nudge or the boost to kind of transition smoothly from state to state, so
Okay.
there's less resistance. And what happens when you resist? Your heart rate goes up,
Right.
right? Your breath rate goes up. Your thoughts get faster because you're thinking instead of, oh, I'm going to socialize right now, this is going to be fun, or I'm going to sleep right now, I can't wait to go to bed and feel how comfortable my mattress is. You're thinking, oh no, what happens when I go to bed?
Right.
Right? What happens when I'm going to be lying there with my own thoughts, just me, right? And
Right.
then, and I think that's another thing that we see with kids
Yeah.
that's really interesting, that also is really common as adults, but it's way easier to manage if we address it with children,
That's right.
is that kids are not given a lot of education oftentimes around how to understand and interpret their emotions, and that it's just okay to feel stuff. And then you spend, and it's okay to be alone with feeling stuff, right? And that feeling stuff is normal, and they're going to have a lot of these feelings, and you won't necessarily be able to describe them, but you certainly don't have to judge them. Just kind of be aware of them and let them pass. And when we're in bed by ourselves as kids, I think one of the things that I know I faced as a kid that I just didn't understand was, why am I lying in bed alone feeling this way?
Yeah.
What does that mean,
Yeah.
right? And how do I understand that? And then, oh wait, now I'm feeling this again, and I don't really like this feeling. Maybe it's sadness, or maybe it's like anger, something that happened earlier in the day because I got picked on in school or whatever. And then it's like, oh wait, now this is coming up every time I'm alone by myself. And when am I alone by myself most of the time?
Right
When I'm
before
winding
bed.
down to fall asleep. I don't want to do that anymore.
Right.
Right? And then I start judging the experience, which creates resistance, which then boosts my heart rate, and then gets me out of sleep mode. So it makes the transitions a lot harder.
Right.
And we see that with Apollo is really interesting, is Apollo is really smoothing the transitions. It's like having somebody snuggle you to bed rather than falling asleep alone.
Right. So in my universe, the way I always thought about it is sleep is not an on-off switch.
Right.
Right. There's a transition.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to slowly pull your
It's the
foot off the
crossfade you're
gas.
talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And put your foot on the brake. And so I think the process that's the natural process. I think a lot of people, they kind of bypass it. Right. They either try to force the switch with alcohol or a sleeping pill or something like that. Right. Or they never even hit the switch because they're so wound up, that it's never going to get there, right?
Well, if you're not taught that crossfading states is important, you're not taught that you're supposed to have like a 15 to 30 minute transition period,
Right.
then you just expect that,
Right.
oh, I finished work or I finished dinner, time to go to bed. Well, you're
Right.
not supposed to go to bed half an hour after eating dinner. You're supposed to give yourself a little more time.
Time to digest.
Right? You need to digest.
Couple-
You want to
maybe
get
2 hours.
indigestion. Right? You don't want to have like crazy dreams because all your blood is in your
Right.
stomach. Right, and there's all these things that we know and we help share with people, but people often don't get early on in education. And,
For sure.
And so,
Yeah. Having those expectations set properly then sets us up for better sleep, because if we know that that's part of the normal process of it, we
Right.
don't get freaked out about it when we don't fall asleep right away.
And we don't judge it.
That's right. And so then we're able to just say, oh, this is normal, this is part of what's happening, and then we can ease into that better.
Yeah, my hypothesis around sleep is now sort of, as the years have grown, has been there's really two areas. There's discipline and there's acceptance. Right?
Love
And
that.
so discipline is, all the tactics that, we can tell people how to go to bed at this time, follow your chronotype, stop caffeine, all these kind of things.
It's a supportive scaffolding. It's a foundation
Yeah.
structure.
Right,
Skills.
right. But at the end of the day, sometimes that shit doesn't work. I always use the example, like my daughter, her boyfriend broke up with her type of thing, right? I didn't sleep well that night, right? Okay, that makes sense. It doesn't matter what trick I do, right? I'm not going to sleep well because somebody that I care about is not doing well, right? Those are the kind of things that are going to happen from time to time. You just have to accept that. Also, sometimes you might wake up at 4:30 in the morning and that might be okay. It's fine. You can start your day at that time if you want. There's
Maybe you have stuff
really,
on your mind you need to get out.
Right.
or maybe your body was just done.
Right.
It's just like, hey, the body is, our bodies are really smart. A lot of times we think that they're not, but this working mechanism here is unbelievably complicated and works unbelievably well if we just let it. And so a lot of times I tell people, look, if you're waking up early, maybe your body's done, or maybe your body needs to divert energy or resources to something else that's a little bit more important that's going on, and we'll figure out how for you to kind of balance it out. So don't stress so much about it. But if you do, lie there and relax.
Yep.
Right? Because we know that basic relaxation is definitely some level of rejuvenation, right? And so even
if you're not sleeping.
Right, like non-sleep deep rest, right? And so when you start to look at that kind of thing, then I think there's an ancillary use for the Apollo, right? Which is using it in the middle of the night, right? Because that sometimes, or even if you wake up early, like sleep offset insomnia, where you wake up at 4:30 in the morning, you could have Apollo on, and it's almost like a unique form of meditation, right? It kind of puts you into that kind of really nice, kind of relaxed state, kind of
The alpha state.
right? And then you're right there. Like, what could be better, And so I guess if you wake up at some odd time in the morning, utilize it to your best of your abilities. Use it for self-growth, I guess.
One of the things that I think is so cool about this technology is we talk a lot about building skills in people around how to help themselves regulate their emotions better, how to help yourself fall asleep. We teach them skills for that, but that requires a certain amount of, number one, willingness to practice and really learn and use those skills, and that can be really hard, especially at night. If we're feeling really anxious, if we're worked up, it can be hard to use those. And so the thing that I really love about this device is that we don't have to intentionally do anything. We can put it on, we can set it, and it's doing some of that regulation work for us that allows us to use the skills better. And I think for a lot of people, that's a really important starting point. We can teach them all kinds of cognitive tools and breathing and all these things, but it can be hard to use those, and I think this creates a nice foundation for people getting in a state where it's like, oh, okay, I do feel like I could do some of that breathing that my therapist taught me now.
Right,
or
for sure.
I feel like I could use that strategy that I heard Dr. Bruce talk about on TV, or that I saw this thing, and now I can try that. But this is a good entry point for people to soothing their system so they can use those skills more effectively.
I completely agree. And I also think that it doesn't have to be complicated. Right?
Yeah.
So once I set my profile, I set it and forget it,
Yep.
and all of a sudden and now I'm just walking through my day and something's happening and that's okay. And I don't even, it's boom, boom, boom. And I'm, off and running. I like that. That's great for me because sometimes there's a lot of things out there that are really complicated.
Right, that's right, right?
You know, and that's not my bag of tricks.
Well, I think we often don't give ourselves enough credit that we can do really complicated stuff.
Yep.
But
For sure.
we have to be calm
That's right.
and poised
For
to
sure.
be able to be ready to make that kind of change in our lives, right? We just don't give ourselves enough credit. Look at what humanity is capable of. We built cities.
That's
Right.
right.
We built
Right.
this couch that we're sitting on, right?
Right.
We built so much stuff. We built a machine that made this couch
That's right,
that
yeah.
we're sitting on,
Yeah.
right? We've done so much tremendous stuff. We've invented cures for tons of diseases. I mean, we have the capacity to do so much, and yet we expect ourselves to be able to make change when we're in our most stressed out, worst energy state.
That's right.
Right.
How is that fair?
Right.
It's just,
Right.
it's like the
Right.
least compassionate approach to ourselves
right.
that we could ever take, right? You would never say that to your best friend.
Right.
You would
Right,
never go,
no.
oh, you feel like crap right now? Well, take all these activities and go do them
Right.
because that's going to make you feel better. If you don't do them, you should be ashamed of yourself.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And that's the way we
Right.
treat ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, and this is really about optimizing the way that we feel, because once you calm your body, you clear your mind, right? If you can bring the body into a state where it feels safe or it remembers that it's safe,
Yeah.
it's primed to learn. And if we're primed to learn, new stuff is not scary. But when we're
Right.
stressed,
Yeah.
our amygdala detects contrast. Contrast is newness. And if newness gets confused as threat because we're stressed, we're not going to learn anything new, and we'll even attribute the new thing to be something that we don't
That we don't wanna know.
look at or
Right.
know about or even have in our lives, even if it's the most helpful thing that comes from Dr. Bruce himself, right?
Right.
I mean, you look at this with doctors and patients. This is one of the statistics that always fascinated me is that if you look at compliance rates with doctors telling their patients to do stuff, this is the evidence-based stuff that actually works. Compliance rates are 50% at best.
At best.
Because people are not in the state to receive the information, or they are not able to integrate what they're learning into their lives in a meaningful way because they're too stressed out
Yeah.
to even,
Yeah.
enact a change. So technologies like Apollo are really giving you, the benefit of feeling safe and by calming your body through soothing touch that you are in control of,
Yeah.
which is like a double whammy. You get the reminder that you're actually in control of how you feel, which lowers your anxiety because anxiety comes from feeling out of control, and it gives you the ability to direct your attention at then whatever it is that you want to take in, which could be that new thing that helps you change a sleep habit or change an eating habit or just think about things slightly differently around your sleep behavior.
Yeah. And I think what you just said about the compliance makes me think about things with children and teens also, like
It's even lower in
but
children.
it is. And part of it is, the challenge that parents and even, practitioners will say with kids is teaching them skills, helping them understand the information, especially if you've got kids who have some challenges or cognitive difficulties. And then we have the whole normal developmental phase of adolescence where what's happening there is if an authority figure tells me, this is a good idea, you really should learn to breathe and do this. Yeah, I'm not going to do that, right? And so you get parents and even practitioners who are like tearing their hair out over my teenager needs to learn to use these skills, but they refuse to do it. And I think that is another place where the Apollo plays a great role in that, because it's cool, it's interesting, and we're not making a task demand on them, right? We're not saying you need to
Right.
practice this thing that I think is important for you.
Right.
We're saying just put this on, try it, experiment with it, see. They get to be in control of it. They get to experience it, and they're much more likely then to use that and then to be open to some of the other tools we want to teach them. So I just think for kids, for teens, such a great entry point.
It allows them to be in charge.
That's right.
How often when you're a
That's
kid
right.
do you get to feel in control of a decision?
That's right.
Right?
Mhm.
Let alone how you feel.
That's right. Yeah.